Hello and welcome back to the Dream Stream. This is Paul Sheldon, the founder of Dreamosophy. And today we're on session 2 of the Art of Fundraising. Yesterday we talked about a fundamental shift from being interesting to being interested, and how important it is in the art of fundraising to place the focus on the person from whom you are aspiring to raise money. There's been so much attention placed on our elevator pitches and our basic presentations, our 7 principles and our 5 pillars, and many of us have those. But the shift that occurs in the Dreamosophy approach to the art of fundraising is from being interesting to being interested. Traditionally in fundraising, the reason for which you're raising money, or the purpose, is called the case statement. You make your case for what it is you want to do. And that is important. You have to be clear about what it is that you're raising money for. But in the Dreamosophy approach, we center into focusing on the other person and finding out what they care about and listening for what I call a confluence, the flowing together of what they care about and what you're aspiring to. And that's where fundraising can happen. So before we start talking about the 7 questions today, what has come up for you since we talked yesterday? Any comments, questions, reactions to the basic fundamental shift from being interesting to being interested?
Well, I think, Paul, you and I texted a bit yesterday that one of the difficulties that I have with fundraising is there's a power differential of the people who have the money and the people who don't have it. And that has been one of the issues that I have with my current job working for the police department. And I do community outreach, and the community input is they feel that weight of the power differential, that somebody has power, and I'm not sure if power is the right word. And I think one of the most inspirational things about watching your video from yesterday is, all of the people that you've gathered in this community are about paying it forward and saying, if you have, you have to give forward. And I am a very weak person when it comes to asking for money, because I feel like I've always been lesser, and I feel like, I've always been, I go out and, dig my own vegetables and do all that stuff because I don't want to deal with the power differential. And I think that's more of a mental hang up. And maybe if you can address that, I don't know if I'm making sense, but there is a mental component of feeling lesser when you don't have the money and you're having to ask people who have it and they have power over you.
Yeah, I remember in my early days in fundraising, I used to say that people who have money and resources can nice you to death.
I don't even think they're that nice. I think they're very cruel.
Well, sometimes they are.
I actually mean that nicely. I've met some of the most amazing people, but when people have power, I mean, look at what's going on in the global stuff right now. And I am so stuck in a mental dilemma right now where I see the good and I see the conflict at the same time. And I'm trying to, I can't marry the two. The two are not, they're not meant to be married. You're nice or you're not. I'm not a black and white person, but you don't use your resources to punish or criticize or shame. There's no shame. We've never done anything in our lives that we should be ashamed of. And I feel shame all the time because I don't have money to escape. If I had money, I'd actually go off by myself for a little while and just take a respite. And I don't have it.
Yeah, and so may I comment on that a little bit?
Oh, please do. I'm kind of in a mess right now.
Well,
So
that's all right. That's, sometimes these moments of great discomfort are the times when we're learning,
mhm.
and what was familiar isn't anymore, and what's happening is either not familiar or not comfortable. And for me, that's always an index that I'm learning. And so I often ask the question, what can I learn from this? Uh, Life gives us blessings and lessons. And I love the blessings, but the lessons in the long run often turn out to be more profound and more useful than the blessings, because the lessons lead to the blessings. So you mentioned power, and I'd like to tell a story about my Taoist teacher, Master Ni Hua Ching, who's resigned from being the master now. He's 108. And so he has passed the mantle to his son,
Nice.
who is now the living master of the tradition of the integral way of harmony. And someone once asked him about another Taoist teacher, about why he doesn't collaborate with this other teacher and do more things with this other well-known teacher, who is in many ways more famous than Master Ni. And he said, this other teacher teaches about power over, the power to enjoy, the power to have pleasure, the power to get what you want. And he said, I'll get interested in his teachings when he stops talking about power and starts talking about integrity. And one of the fundamental teachings of this 2,000-year-old tradition that the Ni family shares is, when we are in harmony with the natural flow of life, somehow things just sort of work out.
Mhm.
And that's one of the ways that we can find out if we're in harmony with the natural spiritual truth, because things just work out smoothly. That doesn't always mean that we get power or money or resources. It means we get satisfaction and contentment and health, and the 8 pillars of the Noble Eightfold Path in Buddhism: right company, right livelihood, right speech, right thought. And these things show up spontaneously when we are in harmony with that natural spiritual truth. I met a man this year who has had a very difficult life: abusive parents, addiction, homelessness, incarceration, mental health diagnoses. For 10 years, he was intentionally unsheltered. He gave up everything. He basically was a renunciate. And so he gave up possessions and a place to live and a job and a car and all the things that we think of as modern American life, and just wandered. And he told me some amazing stories about being in the wilderness with the wolves in the winter. And one of the things he said was that when he had nothing, he was more free than he's ever been, because there was just no need to deal with all of the responsibilities. He gave up a lot in order to have that. And then I asked him why he stopped. And he said, well, I took a vow of silence for 2 years, and I didn't speak at all for 2 years. And what happened was I got arrested and committed to a mental institution. And that happened several times because he wouldn't talk. And he said he got tired of being arrested and committed. And so he finally started talking again to get himself back to something more like a functional life. But it just reminded me of the spectrum of possibility within what we decide to do with our lives and how we decide to do it. That the ancient teachers in the Hindu tradition will say anybody can achieve enlightenment in a cave. But if you can come into the town and be a householder and have a job and a vocation and a family and a network of relationships, and still hold true to that core of your spiritual truth of being pure awareness, a spark of the divine, a holographic moment of the divine universe, that's the real accomplishment.
You just nailed it.
And that's the path that I have chosen, and it's how I got to be a fundraiser. Because if I say, okay, I'm going to come into the world and live in the world, for me, a sense of purpose and meaning is really important. And so 50 years ago, we took on ending smog in Los Angeles. We failed, of course,
No,
but
I heard your.
it gave us a purpose to live for. And nobody knew how or where to get money and resources from. And so I got volunteered to be the person who would do that. And this notion of a fundamental shift is really pivotal, because there can be little things that contribute to a fundamental shift. For example, the Tree People was founded as the California Conservation Project. And nobody knew who we were, not nobody, a few hundred people. And we would answer the phone, the California Conservation Project. And at the time, the governor of California created the California Conservation Corps and was offering employment to youth who needed employment all over the state of California, except that this was in the days of long distance phone calls before cell phones. And whenever they ran an ad on TV saying, you can get a job with the California Conservation Corps, here's the number, 916, yada, 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 it was a Sacramento phone number. And people in Southern California didn't call that number because it was a long distance call. And so they would call directory assistance. This is back when we had 411 directory assistance. And they would say, I'd like the number for the California Conservation Corps. Well, in Los Angeles, there was no California Conservation Corps. So they said, would you like the number for the California Conservation Project? And they would say, sure, give me that number. And then they'd call us and say, I'm calling for a job. And every time the TV ad ran, we'd get 10 or 15 or 20 calls from young people wanting work. And they would get mad at us because we didn't have work to offer. We were trying to save the forest from the smog. And after about 2 or 3 months of that, I got mad one day. And I said, that's it. I'm not answering the phone California Conservation Project anymore. From now on, we are the Tree People. And 50 years later, the Tree People are still there. Or there was the moment when Mark Zuckerschmuck was creating the Facebook that started out as the mashup. You know, it was a meat market for people to look at pictures of who was the hottest person in the dorm. And they were building it from that. And he went to Sean Parker and said, what do we need to do to make this go viral? This is before the phrase really existed, but you know, how do we make this big? And Sean said, drop the.
Oh, can you say that again?
He said, drop the.
Can
so
you go back?
The Facebook became Facebook.
So what was helpful about dropping the?
It was a marketing ploy.
Is that a good thing?
It was a moment in which the word Facebook was more sticky and more catchy than the Facebook. And it became a household word. And, you know, nobody knows what would have happened if that shift had not occurred. But, and nobody really understands what makes a phrase like spog become a household word. Mark was talking yesterday about spog.
Right.
And maybe in 5 or 10 years, every table in the civilized world will have spog on it. And let's people will say, can I have some spog?
Well, I think one of the things that I love about you, Paul, and everybody that I watched on the video yesterday is the motives are so pure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing that catches me up with money. Like maybe you have a different viewpoint on money. I mean, years ago, decades ago, centuries ago, we can call it money, we can call it trading, but how did people share resources? And like everyone that you connect with, Paul, is all about paying it backwards, paying it forward, saying, I can't make a profit if I don't share this with other people.
Mhm.
And maybe that's why I am needing to take a leave of absence from my job, which is so heavily involved in politics, which I also believe in. But the corruption it's killing me.
Yeah,
It's
and we've
killing my soul. And I want to get back to this idea of what is money actually about? You know, people are in this industry for making money at the expense of other people's, literally their lives. And um I'm trying to find a better peace with this, and I think that's what you are bringing to the table with all of these people coming together, and that's what.
yes. And Amy, do you mind if I call on you? I don't know if you're at a place where you can talk, but I wondered if you could share a little bit about your transition from corporate America to Sunset Print Shop and how important it is for you to have your hands on something real.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Amy, and I'm not on camera because I'm kind of having one of those days
Oh,
that
I'm sure you're beautiful anyway.
and yeah, but I really appreciate your good questions, Sally, too, in the situation you're in. Yeah, for about I worked for a couple of really, relatively great corporations for a while, for a long time. And I worked in digital and building websites, managing people and teams and projects and stuff like that. And with the pandemic, yeah, I just found, working from home, the company I was working for announced that they were going permanently remote. And I would never, go into an office again and on a regular basis daily, and be around people. And I also realized that with this career in digital, everything I'd been making was online. I was sort of virtually existing in the world, not physically. And my body wasn't responding well to sitting at a desk all day, and
Yeah.
staring into a screen and everything. So, yeah, so it just kind of came out of the blue that, or divine spark of something that this opportunity came to partner with someone and acquire a grant to then acquire a local screen printing shop and all of their equipment and kind of take over what they had been operating. It was a very, very small kind of business. And I don't, I like the structure. I've been enjoying the structure of working for a bigger company and having other people figure out how the business is going to survive and never sustain itself. And so, but I thought it would be really amazing. And what I needed to do was to be working around people and to be making things with my hands and with my body. My body wanted to
Yep.
make things and that are real and share them with people. And also the idea of having a print shop and learning how to use it, it's so powerful. Like we can, produce messages or images that spread, positive. Hopefully my intent, is to produce positive messages and help people through this time. But yeah, and to empower people and teach people how to use it and let people experience the joy of screen printing, which is pretty awesome. It's just using a stencil properly. So it can be pretty delightful for people to experience. But yeah, I think I didn't have a good grasp of how this was going to work, how the money would work and how long it might take to get it to be solvent or sustaining. Definitely finding myself in this crux of, first of all, yeah, how do we then how do you get money to survive? I do want to, I think that there's a story here where people who either contribute to the shop somehow, yeah, partner, I'm looking for maybe a business partner, someone to help pay for it to exist in the world, or our corporate clients who can kind of with their dollars like pay it forward and allow us to teach people of all, like have a sliding scale, because I'm right in Oakland on San Pablo Avenue, if you're not local here but in the Bay Area.
No, I know Oakland. I used to live in the Bay Area.
Oh yay. Yeah.
Yay.
I mean, it really gets all types of folks coming in who are really curious about making something, and I find that really exciting. So yeah, I'm
One of
curious
the
how
things, no, thank you for this. I think one of the interesting things is, as you were talking, and we've been talking about the word power, and then you so eloquently used the word empowering people. And what that brought to mind was, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Paulo Freire. He was down in Portugal a long time ago, and he wrote a book. It was translated into English called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And he went down with the indigenous people. And I don't have the full story, so forgive me for this, but this stuck with me so clearly, where the indigenous people fell under the common thing that we're still experiencing when people have power and they come down and they oppress people. And when oppressed people realize they've been oppressed, they get angry and they rise up. Look at what's going on in the Middle East right now. Look what's going on in Ukraine. Look what's going on with the indigenous population still in our country that are so ignored. And that incites anger. And it's kind of like money. It can have a positive term, and anger can have a positive term, but I never found anger to be productive. And what Paulo Freire was trying to do was to teach people how to realize they were being oppressed and how to rise above it without them becoming the oppressors, which happens so often. And I thought that was one of the most eloquent, beautiful things I've ever seen, is and read and heard and studied, is how do you recognize oppression? How do you recognize when we're not oppressed? I don't have money and I actually don't feel oppressed. I feel incredibly blessed. But what is going on with this power differential that continues to oppress people, and how do you address that in politics and things and say, no, you can't do that. You need to be and I apologize for this, you guys. I'm all over the place. I feel like a lot of how we're set up right now, and I feel like this group is one that understands this. There's a hierarchical way that we're set up, and I believe in a lateral way of living. It's not eat or be eaten. It's not.
So
let's expand on that a little bit, if I may jump in here.
No, please do. I love this because this is about sharing. It's not about oppressing.
Yeah, and so Amy's in a very similar position to where Lillian is, to where Mark is, to even where Sally is also, in that there's a gap between the dream of what's possible and the circumstances of what we have to deal with on a daily basis. And our theme for today is the 7 questions, which we may get to, but to get from here to there, I want to share with you an image that came to me a few years ago, and that is what I call the 7 C's. And I'm going to share my screen to be able to give you a more direct view of that, because we talked yesterday about these fundamental shifts, and Dreamosophy is that unique process for dreaming up a life worth giving. And I put the videos up on LinkedIn and also on YouTube, and there's an audio on LinkedIn also of where we started yesterday. But this is the 7 C's, and this is what I've observed in 50 years of studying the process of realizing dreams. In 1983, my master's thesis, to be formally designated as a master of the art of human development, was titled Dreams for the Future. And I studied how do people's lives change when they have a dream to live for that's bigger than themselves. And I wasn't concerned with whether that dream was a business or a family or a nonprofit enterprise or a co-op. I was just interested in how does your life shift when you have a dream to live for that can be used like a skyhook, because there's no evidence for the dream in the day-to-day world. And when your dream is something like ending smog or rescuing children or creating a new condiment or having a local print shop that gives people a chance to express themselves, that dream, when you wake up into the dream, it colors, it provides a lens through which to view the circumstances and the health challenges and the financial challenges and the relationships and the drama and all of that. So it begins with a confluent intuition. And what I mean by that when I say confluent intuition is there's this flowing together of the dream of what's possible and the starting place that we're in now. And I have this felt sense that something is possible. Some possibility for the future is emerging out of these circumstances that I'm in now. And that leads to creative imagination. Like, what would it be like if? And creative imagination is very important because we need to be as specific as we can about what it is that we're imagining. Is it for me? Is it for me and my family? Is it for the whole world? Is it for all the people that I know? How are we reaching out? Is it an invention? Is it an organization? Is it a song? Is it a non-fungible token? Is it a sports team? What is it that I'm envisioning as possible? And it's really important to fill in the blanks, because if we don't, then the dream stream will fill in the blanks. Like water. If you fill a bucket with water, it's going to go around whatever else is in the water. And if you fill up all the bucket, then your vision is there, but water will still come in and fill. The old Zen story of the bucket full of rocks that can then be filled by sand in between the rocks, that can then be filled with water in between the rocks and the sand. The dream stream has this process of infusion that it fills in the details. And so that creative imagination proceeds to careful intention. And I've some of people who've heard me talk before have heard me talk about my wonderful journey of finding my perfect woman. When I was younger, I wanted to find my perfect partner, and I was a distributor for Success Motivation Institute, and I was teaching about goal setting. So I had 14 qualities on my list of what I wanted in my perfect partner. And it had specific things like Bulgarian folk dancing and ecological values and a spiritual orientation. And I had a physical description. And I met this woman who had 13 out of 14 of the qualities that I wanted. She wasn't blonde hair and she didn't have blue eyes, but you know, that's culturally determined. So I wasn't so concerned about that. But she had everything else, ticked all the boxes on the list. And after about 4 years of pursuing her and loving her and adoring her and inviting her to love me, I realized that I had forgotten to put on the list, loves me.
Oh my God.
And so she met the man of her dreams, and it wasn't me.
Oh my God.
And it led to an incredible midlife crisis. And so careful intention is very important, that we lay out as many of the details that we can of what we have to realize. And that's where storyboarding and business planning and all of the specifics of how do we fill in the blanks of what we would like to realize, how big the company is, where it is, how many people are involved, what language we're speaking, all these details we can fill in as they emerge. And that then leads to conscious attention. That's maintaining the dream, being the spokesperson, being the one who who says, yes, this is the dream, that's not the dream. One of my favorite examples is in the early days of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Joseph Smith was channeling these wonderful visions of what God said is going to be happening for the restoration of the church. And some other people popped up and said, I've had a vision of God too. And God told me that we're going to do this, and I'm a prophet too. And lo and behold, right about that time, Joseph Smith had a revelation that he's the only revelator. All the visions for this dispensation were going to come through Joseph Smith, which made it a lot easier than having 20 people running around claiming to be prophets. So that conscious attention is focusing in on what is our intention. And once we have that, then we can move into concerted action, like a concert, like a symphony orchestra, that everyone is in concert with each other, that we are coordinating, we're singing in harmony, we're playing in harmony, we're working together toward a shared vision for the future. And as that begins to happen, it gives the possibility of calm reflection, of taking a moment as we're moving in the thick of the flow of getting our device patented or getting our website perfect. We stop for a moment and reflect on, is this exactly what I had envisioned? Is it changing? Do I still want this? Have that reflection. And that is important to infuse with consistent gratitude, to be grateful for the lessons as well as the blessings. Yeah. And to continue that cycle ongoingly through confluent intuition and creative imagination and careful intention. We do a lot more work in Dreamosophy around how to implement this cycle. But the cycle itself is like a sky hook. Martin Luther King used to talk about watershed moments, where there's a moment and things just either come together or fall apart. And that moment lives as like a watershed, as if you've been going up one side of the hill and you get to the top of the watershed and everything on the other side is downhill. Mm-hmm. And we can call those watershed moments forth by focusing on this cycle. So I just wanted to share that with you all, because when we're in the thick of the moment of dealing with the circumstances, sometimes you just have to deal with it. You know, if you're dealing with a crisis, if somebody's being very intense, you have to deal with that. But then when there's a quiet moment, and there always are a few quiet moments, you can return to these 7 C's and check yourself, where am I in this cycle of realizing the dream? Because having the dream to live for that leads to a life worth giving is that sky hook, that we sink our hook into the vision of what's possible and ground ourselves as a creative dreamer rather than somebody who's just trying to make ends meet. And there's nothing wrong with making ends meet, and we have to do that too. But more important than that, we have to have that dream to live for. And I want to use Amy again as an example, because when Amy and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, I love language. And I got this little insight about Sunset Print Shop, where a large part of what Sunset Print Shop does is put people's logos on stuff. Like people have a community organization or an artistic enterprise or a business, and they want their logo on a t-shirt or on a sweatpants or on a piece of paper that they can frame and mount on the wall. And I was thinking about the first line of the book of John in the Christian New Testament, which is translated into English as "in the beginning was the Word." But in Greek, it's en arche en ho logos. And the word logos is that qualitative expression, that the ability to express a message that is associated with the spirit of the Christ. And the companion of that logos is Sophia, who is the ancient sacred feminine principle who was embodied in Mary Magdalene and in all of the Marys. And it suddenly dawned on me that the word logos is the same word as logos. And what Amy's doing at Sunset Print Shop is giving people an opportunity to embody that logos, to be that moment of "in the beginning was the Word, in the beginning I expressed something." And she's giving people the opportunity to ground their expression in an image, in an item that they can share with other people. And Mark is doing something similar with SPOG, where there's going to be an identity that people can connect with. And Bob Dunham says a leader is someone who puts forth a vision that other people commit to. And so what Amy's doing is she's giving people an opportunity to express their vision through putting their logo on a shopping bag or a t-shirt, but also having that moment of self-expression where you have self-confirming, self-transcending impact on the world. And that for me is what this cycle of the 7 C's is. You start with this felt sense of, like the definition of obscenity, I can't tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it. Or I can't tell you what it is yet, but I can tell you what it's not. And you sort through this, the Sanskrit word is neti, 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 not this, not this, not this. But then you get a little closer. And so I wanted to share this process with you because it's an important part leading up to the 7 questions, where we're moving from focusing and solely on what you want to accomplish and what you need to get and what you're trying to get to, and beginning to focus on other people who may be able to help you. And I just want to give you a preview of what we're going to talk about on Wednesday and Thursday, which is how not to ask for money. People often say, I hate asking for money. I hate asking for support. Well, don't. What really works is to ask people what they care about and to listen for confluence between what they care about and what you're proposing. And long before you launch into your elevator pitch and your 5-minute or 15-minute or 30-minute sage on the stage presentation, what's really important is facting, doing that pointing to something. And you don't have to really even pay attention to what you're pointing to. You just go, what is that? Or tell me more about that. And people launch into what they care about. And by listening to what's important to them, you will discover whether or not there's an opening. And it's okay for there not to be an opening. One of my favorite coaches used to say to me, if the people you're trying to reach are easy to reach, you're trying to reach the wrong people. And so you may have to kiss a lot of frogs. You may have to sort through a lot of conversations where you realize very early in the conversation that we don't have a confluence here. This person is not concerned about what I'm interested in, and that's okay. You ask them for referrals and move on.
So,
and it's
so
the
when
same process.
Paul does that become manipulation and just letting it go?
Stuart Emery says support becomes manipulation when you're no longer pushing someone in a direction they want to go.
I need to hear that again, because
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with people who are manipulative and
Yes. And I struggle with it too, because I can be
Yeah.
manipulative.
No, I can't either. And this is why I go down rabbit hole, because I never see people like this. I don't see, I live in Chicago and I see the drug dealers on the corner and they give the biggest hugs in the world. They're not manipulators. They're
Right.
So
They're
I'm
traumatized people
struggling.
doing the best they can.
They are, and they're
Yeah.
so lovely, and they give huge hugs. And I've been criticized for hugging drug dealers and all this stuff, and that's beside the point. But I love that you're talking about language and how we. And I think again, it goes back to motive. And I'm also very compassionate when people's motives. And I think you brought up the word trauma. There's a lot of compassion that needs to go around trauma, and there's a lot of compassion. No one on this planet is disposable.
Right.
No one.
So to answer your question about manipulation, I'll say again, support becomes manipulation when you're no longer pushing someone in a direction they want to go.
I need you to say that again, please.
Yeah, it's support becomes manipulation when you're no longer pushing someone in a direction they want to go.
Okay.
And so we think a lot about athletic training,
Okay,
where
I hear you.
coaches will push people to pump
Yeah,
weights and to lift more than they thought they could lift.
I hear
Or
you.
when
Got
Lillian
it.
and I first met, Hunter Lovins and I were teaching at Presidio Graduate School, and people would complain because we gave them an A-
Mm,
on a homework assignment or a paper. And I would get these flame emails or these phone calls where they would say, I'm demanding my tuition back. I'm quitting. This is impossible. I did not come here to receive an A-. I'm an excellent student. I did
mm,
excellent work. And I developed this rap with them in which I would explain Hunter Lovins is not looking for students. Hunter is looking for partners in resolving climate change, in developing a lifestyle and systems that are sustainable for everyone on the planet. She's working on what Bucky Fuller used to call a world that works for everyone. And she doesn't care whether she gives you a C- or an A+. What she cares about is your work going to make a difference? And if somebody like that says to you, you have more potential than you can see yourself, if she says this is a B-, you're capable of much better than this, that's a compliment, because she's seeing in you the potential to do even better than you think is your very best. And usually people got it. They would realize that this is someone who's taking an entry-level athlete and seeing in them Olympic potential, and saying, if you really knuckle down here, you can make a difference in the world. There's more potential here than even you realize. So that's not manipulative for her to say that. I mean, one could say that it is. You're pushing someone to become greater than they think they are. And yet most people, when we're done or further along with that process, thank us for it. It's like, oh my God, I never realized that I could do this. Thank you. And so Sally, you don't need to worry about being manipulative. The old thing about Benjamin Franklin said, in order to sell a man something, you have to first make him think you're his friend.
I
You're
think
not going to be that kind of insincere.
I think one of the things that I'm so grateful to you, Paul, and whoever's listening right now, is that you surround yourself with really genuine people. I don't, I, I see everyone as genuine, and that's where I get tripped up is I don't think anyone is bad.
Yeah.
And, but when you're in the throes of somebody who is caught up in not recognizing who they are, and I look at a lot of the world leaders right now, I don't think they're bad. I think they're just lost.
Yeah. And
And
let me digress for a little story here, if I may.
no,
One of
please do.
one of my closest friends in the transformation of America's prisons and jails is a man named Doug Dretke, who was the director of corrections for the state of Texas. And the Texas Department of Criminal Justice it's one of the largest departments in the world. And it's not known for compassion and kindness. And I met Doug in Niagara Falls back around 2011. And I was at the North American Association of Wardens and Superintendents giving a presentation on greening America's prisons. This is almost around the same time that I met Mark, when we had created this program for greening America's corrections industry and communities that we called clean and green jobs. And I had given a presentation, and then the 70 some people that were at this conference went out to dinner at a restaurant overlooking Niagara Falls. And I was randomly seated across the table from this guy. And, I just started talking with him. Who are you? And what do you do? And what do you care about? And what's your dream for the future? And he shared that he had been the director of Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And I said, wait, Texas, don't they kill people in Texas? Don't they have the death penalty in Texas? He said, yeah, that was part of my job. I said, wait, so part of your job was to kill people, to be the one who pushed the button on an execution? He said, yeah. And I said, well, how many people did you kill? And he said, I stopped counting around 35. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm sitting across the table from the devil. Because that's how, if there is a devil, that's how the devil works, is by taking good-hearted people and sucking them into thinking that doing something is worth doing, and what they're actually doing is killing people. And it took all the presence that I could muster just to stay in the conversation with him. He has become a dear friend, because one of the things he shared with me later on in that conversation was he knows that that's not working. And he knows that the system is not working. And he knows that what we need is broad, sweeping, fundamental transformation at the institutional level, which is something that I've been talking about for 30 years. And Hunter's been talking about it for 50 years. And so Doug and I ended up with several other people designing workshops and giving presentations to corrections professionals about the transformation of correctional culture around the theme of green practices. But that just is an example of kindness and compassion, taking care of staff, treating people with respect, not because they necessarily deserve the respect, but because of who we get to be if we treat people with compassion and respect, and because that works better. And Doug was very helpful in getting our Greening Corrections Technology Guidebook published by the National Institutes of Justice. We still see each other a few times a year at various conferences. And he's one of the more sincere people that I have ever met, because he comes out of a background of doing what he thought was necessary and then realizing that what he was doing was not working and looking for a better way. So, you know, it looks like you're up against manipulation and corruption and disintegration, but there are other forces at work. There are other flows coming through that appearance at the same time that it looks like corruption and manipulation and exploitation. There is heart in the moment, and there are people who have heart, who are caring to the best of their ability, given the traumas that they have lived through. They're doing the best they can to take care of themselves and the people they care about. And, you know, I could go on and on for a long time, but I just wanted to share that, that this whole theme of manipulation and fitting into a system that is benefiting the oligarchs and the people who are the liars and the cheaters and the exploiters, that's where we're starting from. And it's up to us to be the vision of what's possible. You know, that old bumper sticker, we're the people we've been waiting for. We can do that, and with corrections we accomplished a fundamental shift that is still playing out around the greening of America's correctional institutions, but that's like a little tiny example of the possibility of transformation within a system that everybody says, oh, you couldn't do that here, that's not possible. You know, and we had to make adjustments. Like people said to me, you cannot talk about climate change, you can't talk about global warming, and you can't cite examples from California, Oregon, or Colorado. And so we started talking about budgets and saving money and staff satisfaction and reducing recidivism and increasing safety and security. Oh, they were all over that. And then it was the same solutions. It was the same stuff we would have advocated in order to save climate change. We ended up advocating in order to save money and increase safety and security. I don't care. Same result. They still changed their light bulbs and set up recycling programs. So there is hope, but only if you generate it.
No, there
Somebody's
is
not
hope,
going to come up to you and offer you a bucket of hope.
I think one of the things that I'm struggling with is the people who have been victims of the people who have now changed their lives. And
Yeah.
I think learning how to foster forgiveness, who am I to tell somebody to forgive something? But I do believe in this. You know, I've been studying a lot in the last couple of years, which is so wonderful. I don't know if you're familiar with restorative justice practices.
That's what I
Um,
eat for breakfast.
Thank you. So you get it. You get
Yeah.
it. This is one of the things that I've been trying to foster, but you can't force that on somebody either
Right.
who has gone through the loss of someone that you have met in the correctional institution that has persecuted their family member, and they're
Yeah.
still dealing with that loss. And, you know, one of the phrases that I grew up with in life is loss is gain. And that can sound very trite if you're not in that mental space to understand what that means, which I think maybe that's what you're doing, but you can't force that on someone when they're grieving. And they've
Right.
had, there are many books that I've read about people who have been incarcerated. You and I have talked about this. That's how we connected a lot about this on the prison system and revamping that. But people who have been incarcerated erroneously, and they've learned how to forgive.
Yeah.
So I
And so we're
think
going to
there's a
do,
forgiveness component that needs to be brought
yeah.
into this, because if you don't teach people how to forgive and what that really looks like, you can't ask people to, I don't know. We have to learn how to do that in a way that is entirely compassionate with what it means to lose and be oppressed. And that's exactly what Paulo Freire was trying to
Yeah.
do.
So Paul, when you were talking about the 7 pillars, is that the same as the 7 C's, or is this different? Did you
I
talk about?
don't have 7 pillars.
Okay, 7 C's.
Some other people have pillars and
Okay.
posts and principles and practices. We just have the 7 C's so far. It
Okay.
hasn't taken any other form than that.
Okay. I just
So I
didn't.
want to declare a transition here. We're going to go into our VIP session, and I'm inviting all of you to stay if you can. And I'd like to end this early portion for today with a little song. And this song was written by my friend Ken Collins, who used to be a lawyer, but retired from being a lawyer to become a folk singer. And it goes like this. She carries her dreams in a song round her neck, the color of love when it's new. It moves with each curve of her breath as she sings, a song only heard by a few. Dreams without hope won't come true. Wishes still need faith to fly. Hearts that can open like new will dance to the song of the sky. She circles her hand lightly overhead, and magic comes circling down. She kicks up the hem of her skirt as she twirls, her feet never touching the ground, singing dreams without hope won't come true. Wishes still need faith to fly. Hearts that can open like new will dance to the song of the sky. How long has it been since you dreamed with your heart? Dreams that were sacred to you. How long has it been since you sang with your heart? Words that were sacred to you. Because dreams without hope won't come true. Wishes still need faith to fly. Hearts that can open like new will dance to the song of the sky. The timid of heart say her song is too bright, nursing their dreams lost and bruised, while she dances round with her eyes shining bright, singing you've got nothing to lose, because dreams without hope won't come true. Wishes still need faith to fly. Hearts that can open like new will dance to the song of the sky.
Beautiful.
Thank you.